Kia ora. Welcome. Episode 3 of Hanging with the Hangman. Nah, jokes. This is the Dan Hooker Podcast. Dan Hooker Podcast. Name's not going anywhere. Get out my comments. That's all I have to say about that. What's been going on with me in the last week? So I went up north. Something serious I want to talk about. I went up north with one of my fighters, Aaron Toe. His cousin, Waka Harris, passed away about 2 weeks ago. So we went up north at Rahiri for his tangi. Had a big send-off for him and a big party. Young guy, full of energy. He come into the gym. Energy coming out of his ears. Explosive kid. And I always knew that I could do something with him if he came in, and I knew it wasn't the time yet. You know, he was busy with other things, but I knew one day he'd show up at my gym and put the time in, and I could make a real fight out of him, real ball of energy, and he just came in with a real injection of going a million miles an hour. So he'll be sorely missed. We had one heck of a send off at the end of last week, and you know, he'll live on in our memories for sure. What else? Nah, that's good with me. I'm back at City this morning, back with the boys, rolling, getting sweaty and turning into a mess. Now, if you've been listening to the first couple of episodes, the real focus of this podcast is to kind of put Australasian MMA or Australasian combat sports front and center and prioritize that a little bit more. We just are lucky this week that we have Australasian MMA fighters in the front and center of the global stage. So we have 4 fighters fighting on the UFC card, pay-per-view card this coming week. And it's, I would have to say, it's the biggest UFC event for Australasia there's ever been. It's huge, absolutely massive. Israel Adesanya headlining against Paulo Costa, Shane Young, Brad Riddell, Kai Kara France, Jake Matthews is in there as well. So there's, 5 Australasian MMA fighters doing massive things on the global stage. And we'll get into those fights, and we'll get into breaking those fights a little further in. I did want to cover the fights that went down this weekend because I felt like it was a great card. Another Australasian MMA gun, Jessie Jess, was out there, and she put on one heck of a performance, getting not one but 2 TKO victories in the same fight. So she kneed the girl on the way down. The girl was clearly a legal blow. The girl was trying to just sit down, which is just something you cannot do. It was weird. The ref stopped it. Should have been when the ref separates a fight, he's waving it off. If the referee comes in to interject and stops the fight, he's effectively waving it off. Jessie caught her with her knee, broke her nose, completely destroyed it. And then the referee took it a look, saw it was a legal shot, restarted the fight, and Jessie just proceeded to beat this chick for another 3.5 minutes, do even more damage, take shots the girl didn't need to take. The ref let it carry on way further than he should have. Terrible display of refereeing in that fight, but congratulations to Jessie Jess on one heck of a performance. Very impressive. Another fight which I thought was very important to mention because I had my eyes on him was this Damon Jackson taking this fight on 2 or 3 days notice. Masad Bektik is a ranked featherweight in the division. He's one of the best guys in the division. So to come in, Damon Jackson, and to finish him the way that he finished him and put on such an incredible show was incredibly impressive. Moving up the card, Mackenzie Dern. Randa Marcos chose to go to the ground with Mackenzie Dern for some unknown reason, to get her arm ripped off. Johnny Walker getting dropped early on, rocked. They're putting each other on their bums, but Johnny Walker turns the tables and gets the finish. Kamzat, I'm going to learn how to say this because he's going to be a pay-per-view headliner soon. Kazmat Chimaev. Man, I really thought Gerard Murchal was going to give him a better showing than that. I thought he'd be able to hang in there, put him to the test for a bit longer, but Kamzat Chimaev just marches over the cage, throws one punch, 17 seconds, knocks him out in the first round. And that's really what this new UFC model is about. He's a product of this new UFC model, getting undefeated guys. I'm not knocking him whatsoever. I'm not saying he's not a super talented guy, but it's a perfect storm. You bring an undefeated fighter who's very well rounded and a world class fighter, but early in his career, he comes in. And it's just a perfect storm how it all came together. Getting back-to-back fights, coming and doing something like this. This kid set himself up for a potentially co-main. Well, definitely, I feel like definitely a co-main event or even a main event spot. He's put himself as the next big thing in the UFC, and it's just this business model that the UFC's running at the moment, with just throwing undefeated fighters, just throwing them into the fire. And seeing if the perfect storm happens, because that's really how they're making these superstars and how making these people that are bigger than the sport. The UFC machine gets behind him now, pumps out his highlight reels, and boom, fans get behind him. We got the next big thing in the division. Very weird fight. Nico Price, Donald Cerrone. Very, very weird fight. If it wasn't for the eye pokes, hands down, Nico Price would have. But on the same hand, good showing by Donald Cerrone. He got rocked. I thought he was on his way out early in the first round, and that would have been terrible. That would have broken my heart, because he's got the most performances, most finishes in the UFC. He's hands down in the Hall of Fame. So you want to see him go out, and you want to see him go out well. So to get him knocked out by a fighter like Nico Price in 30 seconds is not the way that Cowboy wanted to turn his career around. So I'm good that Cowboy will definitely get another opportunity, and I'm excited to see him. But he's, just from where I'm sitting, he's not the same Cowboy that he was a few fights ago. Main event time, Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington. Personally hate both of them, but they're both incredible fighters. Colby Covington dominated that fight. Tyron, I was saying last week on the show, Tyron needed to show a new string in his bow. He needed to do something else other than back himself into the cage and try to time you with the right hand, try to intercept you with the right hand. He really needed to try something new. And when he started, he came out super low, pumping his jab, moving forward, and instead marching Colby Covington backwards. But it only lasted half of round one. He only implemented that style. He really needed to be more persistent with that. It's once the fight settled down, he settled into his old style, and Colby was able to get the better of him. Colby, you just back him up till he's in the cage, throw strikes, draw out the right hand, or shut that right hand down, push him against the cage and wear him out. The exact same way his previous two opponents. He just read the playbook and repeated the same process. Colby Covington gets a win. Weird finish, broken rib. I know he sent he shot Ariel Helwani a screenshot of his broken rib. Weird that would happen. That was I don't know. To me, it looked like, I'm not a doctor, I can't do x-rays with my eyes or anything, but he wasn't showing any sign of a broken rib before. He's saying he got that early in the fight. He wasn't showing any sign of having a broken rib. And if you've ever broken your rib, that is one of the most painful things of any broken bone. Like it's every time you breathe in, breathe out, it's really it's incredibly painful. And that late in the fight, the 5th round or even the 4th round, who knows when, he's saying he kind of got that injury, the broken rib from one of the kicks of Colby Covington, I'm guessing. But to not show a single sign of that, even that late in the fight, when your adrenaline's worn out, your adrenaline's long gone by there, your adrenaline will get you through a round and a half, and then that bad boy's going to wear off, and you're just got to suck up every piece of pain that your body gets in through a fight. So to not show a single sign of a clean broken rib until that very moment, suspicious at best is all I'm saying. Mr. Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington moves on. I would like to see the Jorge Masvidal fight. I think that's the beef. We've much rather that than Masvidal ragdoll Diaz for another 25 minutes. That I did not enjoy. Moving on to the big show. The boys, the Kiwis, the Aussie. On the big card, UFC. There's so many bloody UFCs. I don't know what. 253. That was not even a confident 3. That was UFC 253. Israel Adesanya main event. I'm going to start at the bottom. With my friend Shane Young. He's getting in there at featherweight. So he's coming off an 18-month layoff since his last fight. Back-to-back wins in the UFC after debuting against Alexander Volkanovski. That was a funny fight. So Shane took it on like a week's notice. He went over and jumped in against Alex. Alex was already working with Brad, and Brad Riddell was actually in Alex's corner for that. And it was the third round. Alex had gotten Shane down, and he was sitting on top, and he was already had 2.5 rounds in the bank. All he had to do was sit on top for the last half of a round, and it would have been he could take his win money and do whatever he wanted. So screaming at Shane. Shane was too tired to get up, so me and Huge kind of changed tact because me and Huge were cornering Shane for that fight. Eugene just starts yelling at Brad, saying, "Brad, give him some jiu-jitsu advice." Starts yelling at Brad. I start yelling at Volko, being like, "I thought you wanted to put on a show, Volk. Stand up and give the fans what they want, boy." And we were just spending all of our energy just screaming at both of them. So it didn't work. I spoke to Alex after, and he's like, "I almost let him up." He said, I heard you, and I almost let him up, but didn't quite work. Did what we could. But Shane Young's had a late-minute change of opponent. Now, of the 4 Kiwi boys fighting, I thought Shane had the hardest fight against Landau. Landau? I'm not sure I'm saying that exactly right, but we'll move on. That he came in, one UFC fight against Darren Elkins and absolutely demolished Darren. So that I felt like that was an incredible performance, and I went back and had a look at a couple of his fights, and he was a M1 global champion. And for an American to go over to a Russian organization and win the title like that was incredibly impressive. I thought that he had the hardest fight by far, in my opinion. But he's had a last-minute change of opponent because his, I think one of the coaches of Landau got coronavirus, so he's got a new opponent, Ludovic Klein. Now, I had a little watch of Ludovic before, and he's an impressive guy. 7-fight win streak, head kick, doctor stoppage, punches, head kick. So he's got one heck of a head kick. He's a southpaw, Slovakian, I believe. Record of 16-2. Yeah, very impressive guy. I feel like it's fighting a southpaw and having a southpaw switch of opponent last minute is always a difficult task, but that's something that Shane definitely has in his repertoire, to be able to fight a southpaw. Like, he's already been through that process before. He already understands that process, and it's pretty much written into the back of his eyeballs, so he can go back and follow a plan that he's already had well drilled in. So even though it's a last minute change of opponent, I'm confident with Shane for this fight. Good opponent, but nothing he can't handle. Oh no, I'm looking at the Covington one. Brad Riddell, Alex de Silva. I don't want to get overconfident, but it's quite difficult when you're giving me Alex de Silva. Nah, good record. Alex has got a good record. 21-2. That's a very good record. 21-2. Brazilian opponent. 2 UFC fights. 1 win, 1 loss. He lost via submission, and he beat Rodrigo Vargas via decision. He's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. He's got some heavy hands. Now, I would say he can punch. I wouldn't say he could box. I wouldn't say he is a capable striker. I would say he can punch hard. There's a very distinguishable difference between being a boxer and being a puncher. He catches some submissions, but again, not a specialist. He kind of hurts people with the hands, swarms them, and looks for the submission finish. I feel like Brad's just a class above him. I feel like he's cut from a different cloth, and he should be. Like, if you look at the global rankings for this fight, where can we go? Brad's ranked 34th in the world. Alex de Silva's ranked 83rd, and that there I would say is a fair evaluation of their skills. He's a good fighter, Alex de Silva. He has a good record, but I just don't think he's of the class that Brad Riddell is. Now we have the Aussie. I'm excited to see him back. He's due to COVID and everything. He's been training in Melbourne, so they've been under some pretty extensive lockdowns the past few months. Fighting Diego Sanchez, so huge name in the division. Skill for skill, I feel like Jake is just going to be too much. He's a young athletic kid. Me and Jake actually got in the UFC, the exact same event. We both made our debuts at UFC Auckland, but before that we were actually scheduled to fight. Me and Jake, I was the AFC, I think he was the AFC welterweight champ at the time. I was the AFC lightweight champ at the time, and we were scheduled to fight at like a catchweight, 75 or something, 74, 75 kilos on a Kings of Combat show. We were scheduled for a catchweight, but it ended up we both got signed to the UFC, so that fight never eventuated. Then he started eating the Big Macs and doubled in size. The kid's huge. Kid's got a huge hand. He's got huge shoulders. He had no business being at lightweight, just like I had no business being at featherweight. So I'm good to see him back in that division and on a pretty good tier as of late. 2-fight win streak against some top quality opponents. And I feel like he's just too much for Diego Sanchez. Diego Sanchez's last fight was Michel Pereira, where he took the DQ. I don't blame him. He's got nothing left to prove inside of the octagon. But when you're getting put in those positions and you're looking for to take the DQ win, it's hard to get behind an older guy that doesn't want to get in there and compete. You know, once you lose that kind of edge to compete, I think it's time to start looking to hang them up. But good opportunity for Jake Matthews to get another name on his record, and a big name, Diego Sanchez. One of the longest standing UFC fighters that's been around. Moving up, Mr. Kai Kara France on the main card. That's exciting to see. To see him in that kind of position. Fourth fight from the finish, second fight into the main card of a pay-per-view show. As a flyweight, they've been like flyweight number one contenders. They've been title fight eliminators for flyweight, where that fight happens on the Fight Pass prelims. So to see two ranked flyweights, Kai's 8, Brandon's 10 or 12, to see that up the main card is really going to rocket one of these boys into the title picture or into a shot at a top 5 flyweight. So huge opportunity for Kai Kara France. Brandon Royval, good fighter as well. I took a little look-see at him too. Where did I put his? Here we go. So he fights out of Factory X Muay Thai. I've been to Factory X. It's in Denver. Mark Montoya is the head coach there. Good camp. 3-fight win streak. All 3 via submission. So he made his UFC debut in his last fight against Tim Elliott. Choked him out with an arm triangle in round 2. So that's incredibly, if you've been following the division, Tim Elliott, one of the more very awkward guy to fight. Very awkward fighter. Very unorthodox. but great grappler. Great scrambler, great grappler. To get a submission victory over a guy like that really proves he's a dangerous threat on the ground. But I seen a stat come up, I don't know if it was in the past UFC or the week before, where it showed Kai's in the top 10 of takedown defense in the entire UFC. I think his takedown defense is upwards of 90%. It's in like 90 or 92% defends of all takedowns. So for this fight, it's pretty straightforward game plan for Kai, and that'll be to keep it on the feet, pick his opponent apart, stay off the ground. Stay off the ground, my friend. That's something I feel like Kai will be very capable of doing. So it's all looking pretty rosy for our boys. Heading into the main event, Paulo Costa, Israel Adesanya. What can I say about this? Too much weight's not enough speed work. I feel like this is going to be a very one-sided fight. I do not feel like this is going to be the biggest test of Israel's career. I feel like Paulo Costa is too limited of a striker. He accepts, wearing a few shots to give a few shots, wearing a few shots to give a few shots, which will work against another limited striker. But when you're against a guy like Israel Adesanya, who can pick his shots better than anybody in the world, and you're standing across from that guy, you let him hit you, he will break you down. You let him hit you, he will hurt you. He will pick you apart, and he will stop you coming forward. So it's going to be pretty obvious. It's going to be pretty obvious when Paulo Costa starts getting hit and he starts moving backwards. It's going to be pretty obvious when the momentum shift starts happening into this fight. From watching Costa, punches his way into the clinch, punches his way out of the clinch. It's he's just a guy, young guy, hungry, undefeated, but just relies too heavily on his athleticism, relies on too heavily on his durability and his athleticism to get him out of tough situations. And against a guy like Israel Adesanya, it's not going to be a very good night for him. I think of the 5 Australasian fighters, I feel like Israel has the easiest fight. I feel like Kai has the hardest fight, but I think I'm sitting positive. I'm sitting pretty. I'm going to be smiling all afternoon. The boys aren't going to let us down. Happy days, Australasian MMA, 5-0. We'll take it and we'll leave. So it's an incredible show coming up. Incredible performance by Jessie Jess. And we're looking forward to an incredible show by the boys on the weekend. I cannot wait. I was gutted that I missed out on being a part of the camp, being locked down at the gym with the other boys, and I'm incredibly gutted that I didn't get an opportunity to jump in on this card and be a part of the whole thing. That has really lit a fire under me, seeing these guys and seeing them all together, because at the end of the day, energy is shared, and energy creates energy. So when you have 4 of your teammates like on a card, they're in the gym, they're just bouncing energy off each other and filling the room and really inspiring each other to do some incredible things. So I'm nothing but excited. I've just been an observer this camp, and it really does light a fire under me. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. I'm more excited than anyone to see these boys go out there and do their thing. Boom. Now it's time. We'll start wrapping up. We'll move into the Twitter questions. Dunks _ who can drink more, you or Volkanovski? Volkanovski, hands down. Hands down, Footy Volk could drink me under the table. Footy Volk is a completely different man. We're not even getting into that. Mike Marquise at Red Polymer. Favorite starter Pokemon? Bulbasaur, we've got Charmander or Squirtle? Squirtle. We're moving on. Drew Tangahu. Dan, you hear fighters say they would never fight a teammate, and then some say it's just business and they would. What happens when Brad makes his way up the lightweight rankings? Do you fight each other? If not, how do you work around this if you are both ranked in the top 10? I don't think that fight will ever happen. You know, two teammates helping each other towards the same goal. There's enough people in the world. You don't look, there's 160 people in the division. I think it's very unlikely we would ever be put in that situation. Observer UFC, would you like to welcome Michael Chandler to the UFC? Very good question. And now this man here, Michael Chandler officially has my attention. I was unsure how much stock the UFC was putting into this kid. I was unsure, as well as a lot of fans, how hard the UFC wanted to push Michael Chandler. But now them saying that he's the replacement for the title fight, you have my attention. First you had my curiosity, now this man has my attention. So obviously what's happened, Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson was supposed to fight. Dustin Poirier was asking for an increase in pay. The UFC didn't want to compensate him. They brought Michael Chandler in to replace him. But obviously Tony Ferguson turned that fight down too. And Tony Ferguson wants the UFC to get him the Poirier fight and that be the title eliminator. So the UFC has said, screw you both. We'll put Michael Chandler ahead of you and throw him in to that title eliminator. If that doesn't turn out and he doesn't come in there and he doesn't get an opportunity to fight for the belt, I will fight Michael Chandler next. I had no idea that the UFC was going to put that kind of stock in him. But if they're going to put him in as a replacement for a title fight, that's showing how big of a star they think he can be. They're showing what he's capable of, how much stock they're putting into him. So I would happily fight Michael Chandler, welcome into the UFC, and Nia's face off. Next question. That's a Chandler question as well. What do you think of him being the backup for the lightweight title fight? Yeah, I understand it. It's business. 'Tis business, kids. Anthony Lorenzen. What are your main focuses in camp right now? Now that you feel needed to be addressed after a war with Poirier. Always working on everything, but just waiting for everything to fall into place. I feel like there was a lot of things I was working on and nothing leading into that fight was falling into place. Not enough patience. So to say that you're focusing on that in the gym is something. Yeah, it's not really something you can correct daily in the gym. I don't feel like it was a technical fault. I feel like it was a fault in the mental approach to the fight, as opposed to a technical failure during the fight. So it's, to say that I'm going into the gym and working on these techniques and this is going to be the correction to that mistake, I think it's bigger than that. I think it's the way that I approach the sport. I think it's the way that I approach the fight. So that needs to be addressed separately. I've been addressing it constantly ever since that fight, and I'm not finished. I don't feel like I'm at where I haven't figured things out the way I need to figure things out to make those improvements. So, it's a good time to be kind of sitting on the sidelines and watching how everything plays out. Ooh, Joe Tuitavake. Who would win in an open weight BJJ comp at City Kickboxing? Who would win the kickboxing? Who would win straight boxing? Who wins wrestling? Very good question. Joe Tuitavake. Who would win BJJ? Benny Boyce. Big Benny Boyce. Kickboxing. Israel Adesanya, I think will be up there. Straight boxing, I think Junior Fire would punch everyone's heads off. Ooh, him will have a good fight. But Junior Fire is 6'9", 280 kilos. That's a big boy. I want to stay away from him. Vade Blade. How's COVID affecting you boys at CKB? I know New Zealand has been pretty ruthless in squashing the curve. Yeah, these boys were locked down in the gym. These guys are living at the gym for a couple of weeks, so it's greatly affected their camp. But I feel like it gave them more focus leading into this one. Mr. Blonde 888. What do you think is the key to finishing the championship round strong going forward? Good question. I think both 5-round fights for myself were two very, very different reasons. I feel like the Felder fight, I was tired in the championship rounds from winning all of the other rounds leading up to that. I think that's why I was tired. So that I can cope with. If I get tired in the last 2 rounds from winning the first 3 rounds, that's something that I can live with. The Poirier fight, well, the gym being shut was not like a huge help to the game plan. But anyway, moving on. That's a wrap. I'm looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to coming back here, smiling, cheersing everyone from a great success. Big success. All the boys getting the wins. Looking forward to next week. That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.